Okay, so this is Todd Atkins, and this is a show I've been waiting to do a long time with Eddy Millis. And one of the reasons I was excited to do it is because I watched that "Fighting in Plain Sight" kind of short documentary on YouTube, and I thought you were really great in it as far as the interviews went. So, what I like to do for people starting out is, I think I have some hardcores that listen to this, but also some new people. So maybe you could introduce to somebody who maybe has never seen you before.
I guess I'm, best known as a trainer. Um, I started a gym called the Shark Tank. We started in 1997, 96, 96. And originally I was working as a loss control person at Super Kmart, you know? And it was funny because I remember I was working, I think it was nighttime, and I went out on these two guys. They were stealing a lot. And what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to stop them. Back then, we could detain them, and then handcuff them. But I was working alone, and it was two guys, and I went out on them, and I asked one of the guys that was working the front end. I think it was Ronnie or his brother Tommy to come out and just make sure they backed me up. These guys are stealing a lot. It looks like they're going to do what's called a push out, where they load the shopping cart out, push it out the exit. So anyways, I went out there and stopped the guy, and they got an altercation. I was able to take him down and use some jiu-jitsu skills. And that's where it all started, really, was because these guys were like, oh my God, what was that? And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, we were breaking into the gym at Chaffey College. And when I say breaking in, we'd have to use a coat hanger to get into the gym, to get into their wrestling, the defunct wrestling room. And we started practicing, what we knew of to be MMA at the time, because it was so brand new. And we just a group of guys that had love and passion for it. And we're training and leg locking each other, and taking each other down, and kickboxing and all that. And then it grew. I had a background in martial arts since I was 8. And then when I went in the Army, I trained with Edward Adams, who had a background in Goju and all that, and kickboxing. And so when I was in Germany, I got to be on this little team, and we travel and fight. And most of it was like it was harder than point fighting and less than being in the ring kickboxing. And yeah, it was good. And that's really, I've been doing it since I was a little kid. I had a fascination for it by watching Kung Fu theater. And, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I used to take milk jugs and fill them with water and hang them in the backyard and make my own little, gym and practice. And then finally, when I joined a gym, my parents didn't even take me. I'd have to take the bus uptown Whittier to go to this gym. But it was weird because I always knew there had to be something more than your basic Thai crane or your karate. I knew it was lacking. It was missing something. And I was at a park one day, and this guy came in. He used to walk around the town barefoot. He was a legend. His name was Arden, and he was a Kung Fu Sansu guy from Jimmy H. Wu, who had started his Kung Fu Sansu studio in Whittier. And this dude was known. I mean, we're young kids. We're 15 and stuff. We're looking up to this dude, and he's a legend because we're hearing how he beats people's asses. He's kind of like the Robin Hood of fighting, right? He's a good guy. And next thing you know, he starts training us at the park and stuff. And yeah, I just kept growing and growing. And like I said, went into the military. And then when I got out, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with Pedro Cavallo. And then soon Alan Goyce came to town. You know the name Alan Goyce? I remember when he first came from Brazil. He's a great human being, by the way. He didn't speak much English. I would take him out to eat and maybe have a drink or two. And next thing you know, he's teaching me all these great things. And we started filming. We started inviting American wrestlers to the gym in Upland, Montclair area. And we invited people to come and fight. And we would videotape it. And I was amazed at what the Brazilians could do. And that started my journey to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then I sought out Eric Paulson and became a representative instructor under Eric Paulson, and went to Japan and all these kind of crazy things. Trained with a 7-time world champion, Peter Cunningham, in kickboxing. I was always a guy that wanted to learn from the best, and then become the best instructor I could be. My Achilles heel was actually getting in the ring and fighting. I felt like there was so much pressure and things I didn't know. Like when we went to Hawaii, Superbrawl, you know, we were surfing the day before we were fighting. We didn't know, you know, and you were exhausted getting out there on the surfboard. And coaches shouldn't coach fighters the day they're going to fight. And all these things I didn't know, but it was like space exploration. It was new to us. MMA was new techniques. I mean, you know, now you know pretty much not to heel hook somebody in a fight. If it's an MMA fight, if it's a submission tournament, it's different. But people can deal with that pain, you know, and they'll punch you in the face because you give up position when you go for leg locks a lot of times. So, yeah, that's a little bit about kind of impromptu about me, you know.
Yeah, I thought what made you guys kind of unique was you were doing a lot of the leg game, you know, back then when you weren't seeing it a lot, other from maybe Ken Shamrock, you know, the Lion's Den. Why were you guys doing it so heavily?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and we'll talk about the Lion's Den. You know, I got a lot of love for those guys, and I don't think people realize how tough those guys were. I mean, Jerry Bolander, Mikey Burnett, Vernon White, Pete, and Ken himself. I mean, you know, we'll talk about that. And we used to drive down there and train for 2 to 3 hours and drive back and then train again at night. And it would just beat us up. But I was doing leg locks. I was fascinated with leg locks because I thought, in my mind back then, why try to pass the guard? Why not attack the legs? So I started studying, you know, and I reached out to people that I thought could teach me, and started picking it up and practicing. And, you know, a lot of that back then too was trying to say, you know, what is the best way to do a heel hook? Like, if, you know, if the leg is straight, it can turn, right? But if you bend the leg so it can't turn, and you do this with your legs and this and that, well, the guy can't roll. Then you can, you know, you can get a better toe hold or heel hook and create a better fulcrum. Eric Paulson helped me a lot with that. When I was over in Japan for K1 and L1 and Pancrase back in the day, I would go to the Pancrase dojo and I'd pick their brains. You know, I was a sponge. I just wanted to learn, you know. And I had a fascination with leg locks, and they weren't known, and we were winning a lot of fights by leg submissions back then. And King of the Cage, Superbrawl, Money Cox, Extreme Challenge, all of that. I think I met you at Superbrawl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Now, I want to ask you something because I like to ask guys who are from the California area to kind of give their thoughts on why they think California, the sport was so big there. Because I think people don't realize how important California and Hawaii were, especially during the dark time of UFC when it was taken off pay-per-view.
Yeah, I got to say, first of all, you know, I got a great admiration for TJ Thompson and Superbrawl and all the fighters in Hawaii. Like, my best memories are Japan. I gotta think this through a little bit, but right off the bat, it's got to be Hawaii and Japan. You know, the fighters in Hawaii, you'd either beat them or they beat you, and they'd invite you to their house later for dinner and their drinks. And there was a mutual admiration and kindness. You know, I'd love to say hello to Ronald June and those guys with Jesus as Lord. I have a fondness and a lasting positive memory to those guys. So, and TJ worked his butt off to continue the fights, and it was crazy because TJ would call, we'd be there. I remember he had a fight in El Paso, Superbrawl, and a bunch of people dropped out. So he's like, Eddie, I have to look in my book. It's either, because I don't want to be called, oh yeah, you're wrong. It's either 6 or 8 fighters he needed. So I asked, you know, hey, you know, Danny Fowl, Phil Ortiz, Victor Hunsaker, all those guys. I said, are you guys ready to roll? And TJ's like, hey, rent a van. I'll pay for the van. I'll pay for this and that, and get out there. And it was 2 days before the fight. We just popped in a van, drove out there and fought. It wasn't about the money. I mean, a couple $100, you know, that's why I laugh. And I don't laugh in a bad way, but when we fought, we did it for because we love to fight. And when I trained the guys and I coached them and used my own money a lot of times to do things, it's because I had a love for the sport. You know, there wasn't glory, you know, that I think Sherdog was just starting to come up then, and There are no holds barred websites and stuff. And if you've seen that reporter that, you know, we'll talk about later, that's in jail, you know, if you saw his name and he wrote nice stories on you, it made you feel good, you know, or if you got a part in a magazine or whatever. So in California, you had Ryan, you had Kaja. Ryan did neutral grounds, which was this wrinkled mat, outdoor. People would go down there and fight. If it rained, the mat was wet, it'd slip. But he busted his ass. And, you know, that's when you know, the tap out guys were really, you know, they were in their truck or van putting this stuff out. It was so raw, it was so organic. Damon Morris, his name pops up. All those guys from back in the day. 97, you know, 98. Larry Landness used to have tournaments, you know, great tournaments. And Larry's the kindest guy. And he did his best. Larry, Ryan, Kaja for Cage Combat. He probably had the best gig in Southern California, monetary-wise, because he was in San Pedro. You know, and you have guys like Maverick and all them fighting, and this place would be packed. It looked like right out of a movie set. You know, and you would show up oftentimes. The one time I fought, I think this is like one fight that I don't have documented as a win, which I'm trying to get Kaja to put it on my record, but it doesn't matter, is that I showed up at Cage Combat. He says, hey, we had a guy drop out. Will you fight tonight? I said, well, what are we talking about? He's like, well, 250. I'm like, how about 600? And he's like, yeah. And I went out, fought and won. And, you know, it was like literally 30 minutes. And I realized that, fuck, for me at least, that's the best way to fight. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to stress about it for 5 or 6 days because I'm my worst enemy, you know? And I suppose we could talk about that too, because I know fighters that in the gym were massacring pros, some of the best. But you put them in the ring in front of a bunch of people and they just lose it. Something happens. I believe that that's one of the qualities I was missing, was being able to turn it on once I was in the ring. K1 was good for me, but it was, you know, fighting itself and coaching, doing both, it's hard to do both, especially when you really love your fighters and training your fighters, you know?
I'm curious, when did that switch flip for you where you're kind of like, okay, guys, we're going to be a fight team. We're going to go around. We're going to fight in all these shows. Is this something that you had to kind of build organically, or did you kind of tell them off the bat that this was something you're going to do?
I think I watched the UFC, and this is before I built a relationship with the Lions Den. I seen Ken walking out, you know, and I'm like, this is cool. So we started looking around the area, what was available, and I got contacted because the Shark Tank started getting a name as far as we're going to submission tournaments and we'll fight. And you know, we got raided. I mean, we were fighting at this place called Safari Bar in San Bernardino, and the cops shut it down. They came out guns drawn and everything in the middle of the fight. Two of my guys, Brian Warren, had already fought. Alberto had fought. And then they came and raided the spot. So we were in it, you know, it was crazy. But we got contacted by Mexico, and they said, you want to come down and fight? Now, people don't know about Mexico. This is a whole different breed. And you know, we're talking about fighters, and I've got tapes, you know, from 98. We'd go down there, we'd have a meeting, and they say, okay, I'm going to pay your fighters this, this, and that. We match them up. And the referee happens to be from that organization where all the fighters train. You know, we're going to Tijuana. We're fighting in a cockfighting arena. I actually took Terry Treblecock down there, who owns King of the Cage. That's where he kind of got the whole idea to get started for King of the Cage. I took Terry and got him involved in the business, right? And we had guys that would bite. My guys would be on side mount. Those fighters down there would bite them. I heard later on that some of those fighters down there were injecting like painkillers, like Nubane and stuff in their body. I mean, it was like the Wild Wild West. And then the crowd would heat, you know, the coins, I think the centavos, Mexican centavos, they would heat them with a lighter and then throw them at you, you know, like, shh. And there was one time when Tony Patera got bit. Tony Patera fought Vanderlei Silva. That was my first guy to fight in the UFC. And Tony got bit, and I jumped in the ring, and I started yelling, and next thing you know, the fans are going crazy, and I'm thinking to myself, there's about 16 of us. you know, and I had some friends that you know, were in special operations and stuff down that way in San Diego that came to watch us fight, cool people. But I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to get out of Tijuana if this thing goes crazy, you know? But yeah, we did it, and we fought down there many times. The hardest thing was actually collecting your money after, you know, very shady back then. But it was so raw and organic and experience. And I tell the story to people. I'm like, you know, imagine driving into Tijuana, showing up to the spot, going to the cockfighting arena where they would put a ring in there, and having your guys fight for $50, you know, and some bad tacos, you know?
Yeah, looking back on it now, would you do it again if it was today? I mean, obviously you wouldn't fight for $50, but
You want the truth? I think those are the type of things that, like, I could take to my grave, you know, like being part of something like that. Sure, we all want money, but like, and I'm sure we talked a little bit about trading and stuff like that. You know, you don't always win. You don't always make a lot of money. And these are the experiences in life that shape you and in many ways make you a better person. So would I do it over again? Absolutely. Because when I tell these stories to people, you know, or I tell them, like, I think the final time I went there, how I went to go collect money, and they sent me to this, like, literally like this warehouse, and no one was there. And I think, oh shit, is this the end? I mean, it was crazy. And just, it was a wild, wild west back then. And you went out there and you fought and you did your best, and you had to trust the techniques that you had learned from your instructors to be the techniques that work. And if you look at MMA today versus back then, I mean, a lot's changed, right? It's evolved to such a high level that certain moves you can't even do anymore because people would know about it. But we ended up going to Mexico. I think we fought there 6 times, Tijuana. And then I heard later on they started cleaning it up a little bit better, got a little bit better, and a little more honest, if you will. But really crazy. I mean, you're talking about the ring. You'd step in one section of the ring and it would dip down 3 inches. You know, the athletic commission wouldn't allow that. So it was interesting.
yeah, I think, you know, back in that time, as you're saying, like the Wild West, even in the U.S., stuff was like that. But, you know, that made it special in a way that sanctioning kind of took away, you know, because sanctioning's so organized, they're in control of everything.
Yeah.
But back when it was the Wild West, there was kind of like an aura to the whole scene because of that.
Yeah, and you know, something that I think back to right away, like I think is it safe to say sometimes Ken Shamrock gets some slack? I mean, you know, he gets some negative, but I witnessed how hard that guy trained. I witnessed his conditioning program. I had to be part of that. My guys had to be part of it. I mean, it was brutal. And Ken and I, we were down in San Diego one time, and we befriended a Navy SEAL down there. We were out drinking, and he invited us over to Coronado one day. And I remember Ken getting up on the pull-up bar and just crushing it, like 30 or something crazy. I mean, back then, there wasn't a lot of access to technique, and it wasn't refined like it is now. So it was all about heart, you know? Ken would take the guys, right? And his wife would, we'd get in a van, and he'd drop us off at this beginning of training at the bottom of this hill. And you'd have to sprint to the top of the hill. It was about half a mile. And then the van would pick you up at the top and bring you back down. So you did that 4 or 5 times. Then you got to the gym and you did 25 minutes of jump rope. Then you did drills, takedowns. And I remember going with Mikey Burnett. And I thought that guy was a fucking machine robot, Mikey Burnett. Tough as nails, man. And I just seen it in all his guys. They were just physically and mentally tough. And to that, I give him so much credit because I don't think people really know because they were never there. You know what I mean? And just the training. And then you would have to go with, if you were going to fight a championship fight, you'd have to go with 5 guys for 5 minutes fresh MMA in the cage, you know? If you were doing a non-title fight, you'd go 3 guys fresh, and you'd have to be in there for 15 minutes. And then after you finish with this calisthenic program with 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 50 push-ups, 50 squats, then 50 sit-ups, and 40, 40, 40, 30, 30, 30, all the way to 10, and then 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way back up. That was something that I never did before. I never saw that doing karate or any of the other stuff I did, you know? Not even when I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time did we condition like that. So that was great. And, you know, Ken, for a lot of us, was our hero. You know, I got along with him really well. And he did a lot for us, I think, and getting my team tough, you know, and we would, we were training with Eric Paulson too at that time, and it was a nice blend to work with those guys.
Yeah, I think it was kind of, I know I was talking to Sean Wheelock about bare knuckle, and he was saying a lot of the guys in that, it's kind of similar scene where people are saying, look, they don't know how to train for this. So guys are asking each other in the back, what are you doing? Are you hitting sand? Are you punching the bag with no gloves on? Are you sparring with no glove? You know, and I think there was a lot of that in MMA too back then, because guys didn't know how to train, or no one knew necessarily what worked.
Or
so you were kind of learning on the fly while you're fighting.
Yeah, and overtraining. You know, we're like the guinea pigs. You think about it. We're the guinea pigs. No one's telling you about your resting heart rate, you know, or training, or VO2 max recovery, or you should be doing this, or days off, or doing, you know, any of that stuff. Now, I mean, I know a lot of guys, they're monitored by doctors. They got it down to a science. Our monitoring was, you know, get out there and do that, you know, and do it. And the only glory was getting your hand raised at the end. But I think there's still got to be glory in losing. As a society, we put so much emphasis on who won. But for guys just to get in the cage and fight and give it an attempt, you know, there's no helmets, you know, we're not playing football, there's no tennis rackets. You're getting out there with another person who wants to knock your head off. And for that, there should be a lot of respect for anybody that stepped in the ring, you know? So.
Now tell me about kind of what shows you feel like your team was getting established, because I know TJ relied on you a lot. Shark Tank will show up, they're going to fight, you know?
I got to say Superbrawl. Yeah, I mean, I have a Superbrawl trophy over here, you know, for outstanding this and this. I got so many of the Superbrawl things. And we have little belts from Mexico. But I would say definitely TJ, for sure. He was very gracious to all our guys. I have no complaints. You know, people want to complain. They want to look back and say, oh, I got paid this. I only got paid that. Well, if you do, you know, look, we all got to make money. But you can't always be driven by money. You have to be driven by what's in your heart, and you have to have a passion for it. If you have a passion for it, I think the money will come, you know? But I would say King of the Cage, Terry. Terry, to this day, is one of my great friends. He was down the street. He's a big cigar guy, too, now. But Terry's always been great to me. I introduced him to the sport in the sense, and we started our first show together. King of the Cage actually was 4 of us that formed it. But Terry was a workaholic, so he eventually took it, and you know, he pretty much said, hey, I'm taking this on my own, and he did it. And Terry's always been great. TJ, Monty Cox would call me when he would need something, you know. I remember he said, I need somebody to fight Dan Severn on Friday. And I think, yeah, it was Monty Cox show in Utah. It was one of those. And I go, okay, I asked Phil Ortiz, I feel, you want to fight Dan Severn Friday night? It was a Wednesday. He said, yeah, let's go. We're just going to party after. You know, these guys were like, they were crazy. There was no, how much am I going to get paid? There was no, oh, I'm not ready. I haven't had a proper 8-week camp. You know, it was the wild, wild west. Let's just go and do it. So we get out there. He's like, you know, I know this guy can out wrestle me. What do? I said, just go out there, rush him and try to, overhand right him, fake a shot, overhand right him in the face, see what happens, And, he didn't win, but we had a hell of a time. We win or lose, for us, it was about the experience, and we had a great time doing it. And our win record, was really good. I mean, we were winning, and we would take what we learned from the win and apply it. And that's how you continue to grow as a martial artist, I think, or MMA fighter, right?
Right. Maybe tell me how you found some of the guys that you had, because I remember you had all kinds of guys. You had Phil Ortiz, Victor Hunsaker, Brian Warren, Tony Covington,
John Allesio.
John
I saw
Allesio.
a show in Canada and invited him down. I mean, I got a funny story about oh Jesus, why is his name out of my head, from Arizona? Fought like hundreds of times. Oh, damn it. He fought in Pride and everything. Has a gym in Arizona. Maverick, Ron Hernandez, Tom Hernandez, Darcy. I had a 17-year-old that he was a beast, Nathan Grego. We took him to Mexico to fight at 17 as a pro, and he was demolishing people. He'd walk around high school back then, 99, 2000, like a god, because they said, this guy's a cage fighter. It wasn't called MMA back then. They were trying to find it was cage fighting or no holds barred or whatever. But a lot of these guys would seek out the gym and say, hey, I want to come train. And it's crazy because they didn't have a background, a lot of them, in any martial art. They just wanted to fight. And they wanted to test him. Matt Helsius, another one, that they took down to Mexico. And he had a wrestling background, strong guy.
Yeah, that little boxer kid. He fought Lincoln Tyler in Superbrawl.
Oh, that's Jose
Lopez.
Jose Lopez.
Yeah.
Jose was 135, and I remember coming in. He said he wanted to fight, and I'm like, okay, great. And I remember sparring with him. He's at 335 pounds, and at that time I was about 205. He hit me in the liver, and I thought I saw the devil. I got to tell you, this kid for 135 probably had the hardest liver punch I've ever felt in my life. And yeah, that's the kid that you saw, that phenomenal hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was great, Jose Lopez and Superbrawl and those knockouts. But phenomenal boxing. He just could pick it up, and he loved to dig into the liver and low kick and then mix it up. So, and then all the guys that, like I said, in Hawaii, Superbrawl, Egan, Inoue, Ensign, all those dudes were phenomenal.
So tell me about the area where your gym was. Why do you think it attracted so many guys like this? What is it about the makeup of where you live,
California, or what?
Or where you live in particular? Because I know Huntington was like, such a hot spot, and it had so many people
Rancho
like
Cucamonga,
that.
we have Shark Tank and we have Millennia, right?
Right. So
yeah,
what is the makeup of that population over there that you think kind of attracted so
I don't know if it's so much just the population, but it's the fact that, Millennia is one of the first gyms too, that they've been around since the beginning and deserve a lot of credit. I mean, these were guys that we were the gym. We actually, I guess in my mind there wasn't, but there was a friendly competition or a rivalry. I felt that, but we were at that time, we were the two go-to gyms back in those days of all, except for Huntington Beach in all Southern California. And maybe it's a couple small gyms, but at one time, I think I had like 30-something fighters. It was crazy,
Yeah, and that becomes difficult to keep up with all of that, as people are asking you to do all these fights.
I will say this. People don't understand how hard of a business it is. You got to deal with the fighters individually and their egos. And then if one fighter doesn't like another one, they may want to leave the gym. Or one fighter may be trying to talk to a girl at the gym that's married, that you shouldn't do that, right? I don't like that type of fraternization. Not that I've ever been perfect, but you got to deal with the fighters and their egos, and then you got to deal with the promoters. And it was not easy, it wasn't easy. There were a lot of times where, you look nowadays and a fighter leaves a camp and goes to another camp, and they say, oh, I went to this other camp because of this, or I went to this camp because of this, or I'm going to this camp because of the hottest camp. That's really hard for a trainer, It's hard to take because you feel like maybe they don't really understand how much you're giving, many fighters don't pay to be at the gym, but you got rent to pay, you got insurance to pay, you got to clean the equipment, you got to have a home you got to keep, you know. I would say that, you know, to answer your question more direct, is that, I don't know, it just seems Southern California was a hotbed. And a lot of the Brazilians were coming over here. Because, I mean, they leave Brazil. They don't want to go to, you know, North Dakota. They want to go to where it's sunny and warm and the beaches. And so can you imagine getting Alan Goyce off the plane and being able to train with that guy? He was amazing. Amazing. You know, and like I said, Joe Moreira and I remember Joe, you know, he says, okay, you know, we spar a little bit, and I started kickboxing, and next thing you know, I'm on the ground and, you know, tapping out, and he starts laughing. He was so kind about it. That was the other thing that made it really made it easy, I think, for me at least, is that the Brazilians were so kind. You know, they tap you out, almost break your arm or leg or whatever, and then they laugh and say, hey, come on, my friend. And we'd go out and hang out and Brazilian barbecue eat or whatever like that. So they were very gracious, at least the ones, the people that I got to deal with. And Eric Paulson, you can't talk about probably the most humblest guy, you know, I've met. And I would drive all the way out to Marina Del Rey to go train with him when he was at the Inosano Academy. And I would see people showing up late that lived 5 minutes away. And I drove an hour out there and kind of disrespect them and just walk in. Because I'm a martial artist. I think you should bow. You call somebody sensei, coach, sir. You show the utmost respect. And I would see it, and just deep down inside, it would really upset me because they didn't understand who they had here. Because you take, you know, there's a few coaches in the world that if you were on an island alone and you had to learn from one person, you want to learn from that person. And one of those persons is Eric Paulson. I mean, he's an encyclopedia of everything. You know, but people want to judge him maybe on his fight career or if he lost the fight or whatever, which is so stupid, because he's definitely easily in the top 10 trainers in the world, you know.
Let's talk about you dealt with Tap Out a lot too as a sponsor. You know, they were like the big ones, you know, coming up. Maybe talk about Tap Out a little bit.
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, I love Charles, and God rest his soul, man. That's his dad was my friend. I mean, I've got some good stories. I mean, I met Charles in a parking lot of Vaughn's, and I think I'd been training or whatever, and we just started talking. He's like, yeah, I started a clothing line called Tap Out, and he walks me over to his car, and he's got this Tap Out shirt with like a hand-drawn dude getting armbarred. You know, the art wasn't great. I became friends with Charles, and he started sponsoring us. And then I met Dan, and Dan and I are still friends to this day. And I met Charles's father. Me and Charles's father got along really cool. Charles's dad liked to ride motorcycles, and I had a Harley. And you know, Charles's energy, I don't want to get choked up. I feel like I'm a little bit more sensitive than I normally am because I lost one of my pups a couple months ago, but Charles's energy was infectious. And if we needed shirts, clothing, whatever, he was there. I remember popping up in the gym. You know, I call him hot chocolate. He called me marshmallow. You know, because you know what I mean? Yeah. And I got the hot chocolate. He goes, I got the Mars. He'd just pop in the gym out of the blue. I'm in the middle of training, and he would pop in and he'd start singing, and everybody would look at him. He'd throw everybody's shirts and everything. I mean, that guy was, I don't want to use him in the past tense because he still lives in my heart, you know, and in a lot of people's heart. Just an amazing person, you know. And I still have a Tap Out shirt that he gave me that I never wore, and it's on a hanger in my closet. I'll never wear it, but I keep it there. And when I look at it, I think about him and respect, you know?
You know, he always thought people could do more. You know, he always thought you could do more than you're doing. Because I remember, like, Sherdog told me, Charles was asking him, hey, what do you want to do with your website? And he said, well, my goal is to be like the ESPN of MMA. And he was like, why? What, can't you be bigger than that? You know, so he always thought that way. And I met him, yeah, the same thing, you know, like of all the people I met in the industry, he was someone that I always remembered because he was really kind, but he really paid attention to you when he talked to you, you know. It seemed like it was very important to him,
And that's
which
because he
most
was
people,
genuine. You can't fake that.
yeah.
You know, you can't fake that. My instructor, Peter Cunningham, in kickboxing, 7-time world champion. I drive out there to from Rancho all the way to House of Champions 3 times a week, and same thing, to train with that guy, and how genuine he was. Boss Rutan. I drive to Thousand Oaks to go train with Boss Rutan, and at that time he had Kimbo up there. And Kimbo was a wonderful human being, at least to me. First time I met him, he was standing there holding the door open when I got out of the car. I mean, he hit like a son of a bitch, but just great people. Boss Rutan was always really great to me. Go-kart, you know, our community in Southern California. I used to do, you know what's funny? Go-kart is really good at leg locks and submissions. So I would see him at like a House of Champions or some of these small fights. I mean, I can't even, you probably have it documented better than I, but I don't even have a count on how many fights my team's been in. It's in the hundreds. If you think of all the guys and all the small shows, but I would see Go-kart at a show and I say, hey, Go-kart, you know that, I heard you did this leg lock, you know, like an inverted this and that. And he's like, he was so happy to take me to the side and take me to the mat, show it to me. So I would pick his brain 2 or 3 times, you know, maybe when I would see him and I'd get 2 or 3 leg locks at it. And I'd say, okay, I got to memorize this shit. Then I see him again and he'd teach me a couple. So he was also wonderful, Go-kart. Yeah, and I'm hoping, and then I trained with Shuki Ron, who was originally trained in Majiro Gym. He's an Israeli, he's back in Israel now, but he had a Majiro Gym in LA. And I was training with him before I fought K1. And then, you know, I started moving. I met Scott Coker, and, you know, Scott's still a great friend of mine. And he gave me a chance. I walked up to him literally in the arena at K1. And I said, hey, I have the Shark Tank, and we're an MMA team. And he kind of looked at me and like, who are you? You know, I mean, if Scott was there, he'd say that. But I told him, I said, hey, I got some guys and myself, I'd like to fight on K1. And he gave me the opportunity, and then finally, you know, I guess one of my claim to fame was taking a Samoan named Mighty Mo, who at that time was pretty much tossing, from what I understand, working, you know, at the various farms or whatever, and doing different bodyguarding and everything, and training him and winning the K1 Grand Prix in the U.S. He won 3 fights that night, and that's probably, you know, as a coach, one of my greatest accomplishments, because fighting 3 fights against, you know, champions all over the world isn't easy, but we had a great game plan. And at that time I was getting way, as a coach, more seasoned. If a fighter fights 1 fight and he's got another one, you can't have him sitting down or laying down because he'll stiffen up. So I knew that. And had I not had experience before in this with Superbrawl in the tournaments, I would never know. So we would ice him, get him moving around, ice him, keep him moving, keep him fresh. And he went out and won. I think he went off at 13 the odds I had him at. And I don't know if you're supposed to bet or not, but anyway, somebody associated with me bet 1,000 on him and won 13,000. So that's cool. And then I got a contract with K1 to be a trainer and scout out Americans. And next, you know, I started training ex-WWE guys to go fight in Japan. And that was crazy. You know, Japan was paying me well. And, you know, I had Chemo fight Bob Sapp, as you saw that fight, which is very controversial, right? Because they gave Bob a standing like 12 count. Chemo had hit him really hard. And after the fight, Dana came up to me. Dana White was there. We talked a little bit. I'm like, this is BS. You know, I'm gonna protest. So then Daisuke from K1 came up to me. I said, Daisuke, this is bullshit, this loss. I'm gonna protest this. And he goes, Eddie, isn't protesting this kind of like Mickey Mouse suing Disneyland? I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. I guess I'm not protesting it. Because, you know, I was working for K1 too. It's not that I didn't want to do the right thing, but I knew that really, where's it going to go? In the long run, my association with K1 and being able to get people over to their fight, get to Japan, experience Japan on their dime, be treated like a, you know, star or whatever, which was important to some of these guys. So I didn't want to burn that bridge. And then, I had guys like Sean O'Hare from WWE, Tom Howard, Sylvester Turkay, who arguably should be one of the greatest heavyweights that ever lived. Boss Rutan will tell you that, the NCAA champion MMA guy. But he took a couple fights and he decided to stand up and fight, not use his wrestling skills. But Sylvester Turkay, to this day, I've never met a guy like that or seen a guy like that. And this guy is God-fearing Christian, didn't drink, didn't smoke, showed up on time, used to toss everybody around. He used to call me Hedgehog, like Sonic. He just grabbed me and ragdolled me. I mean, this guy, you know who Sylvester is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember he kind of had like the ponytail and the beard.
Oh, yeah. And, Boss Rutan, I think, said, I'm trying to get the quote right, he said, if this guy really, trained right and did the right things, he'd destroy everybody. His hands were like a bear paw. And he'd just grab you. And he would train. It was yes, sir, no, sir. A lot of the other WWE guys, they were like, they get on the treadmill for 10 minutes, go in the ring and shadow box. And I'm not going to throw anybody on the bus in the podcast, but there were a lot of guys that pretended to train and didn't train, And having come from training with the Lions Den for so many years and those guys and seeing how hard they trained, it was hard to respect some of the guys that were coming in or being sent to me that wanted to train because they wanted no part of getting hit. They wanted no part of it.
But could you not get Turkay to change what he was doing?
Turkay had another coach that he befriended that a lot of times coaches get in people's heads. And so I think he fought Gary Goodrich in K1, and he decided to try to stand up with Gary, and Gary caught him, and that was it. All he had to do was shoot a double, take Gary down if I was over, And I love Gary. I trained Gary too for a while. Gary came down from Canada, But just, but I mean, that's a great question, very strong question. I mean, how many people, there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So you have to be ready to listen and take the criticism and follow a game plan. The best people in the world, the special operations community, they're the best because they come up with a plan. They rehearse that plan over and over and over and over and over and over. And then they have redundancy, in case something goes wrong, and they rehearse that over and over and over. And that's why they're successful at what they do, and they're the best at what they do. Let alone they have great hearts and the work ethic. But, and then again, that's not to take anything away from Sylvester because his work ethic was second to none. But I think that maybe in that fight, maybe the train. This is my opinion that the trainer maybe this other trainer got in his head or something.
Now, when did you kind of start to transition out of it? I mean, you're not involved to the same level you were before, right?
I got asked to come to a gym locally and teach. I did. I took their guy and built him into the champ of King of the Cage. He won the King of the Cage championship. But I started transitioning out of MMA one December when like 7 or 8 students were coming in saying, oh, I don't have the money for this month. Oh, hey, can I get a free month? And then I look on their Facebook and they were in Vegas partying. I got tired of having to have a gym, and all the gym owners listening to this and instructors, they'll understand, we don't do it for the money. It's not about the money, it's about the love. And I just got tired of trying to ask people for their money and, or one person all of a sudden wants to train with you and then they find out that New Mexico, the guy in New Mexico's, winning everything, and they don't want to go out to New Mexico. Nothing against them. They're a phenomenal team and coaches over there. But that's it, and I understand because I play guitar, right? There's 1,000 guitar coaches. You got to find the one that works for you. But that was the hard thing. I think a lot of times too many martial art or fighters or MMA guys or whatever, however you want to call it, are too quick to jump ship to go to the next team or this team or whoever's coolest. And that was, I was over it, and I also also didn't like a lot of the maliciousness when I would go online and see a lot of stuff about the fighters, anyone, whoever it may be, oh, this person's this, or Bob Sapp's this, or this person's that, but they don't know their story. Some of these guys have no idea the time and effort these guys actually put in to try to be out there and try to be. Now, look, you have to have strong character to be in any sport, continue to be successful. I think I read a book by Stephen Maxwell and Charles Maxwell that says there's 5 A's of a men's downfall: adultery, desperate feelings of aloneness, arrogance, aggressive adventure seeking, and there's another one. But if you don't have strong character and you're out doing drugs, or you're drinking and driving, or you're getting in fights, or you're cheating on your woman, or any of that stuff, it's gonna affect your career, And I seen it all. Again, I don't want to name guys, but I know guys that were just absolute terrors and threw their whole career away because they couldn't control their demons. Me, I left MMA with the tools of, well, if you're an MMA and you went through the hardest training all over, then you can take that work ethic, apply it to a business, whatever it may be, outwork everybody, do the best job you can, wake up every morning and ask yourself 2 questions. Do you care, or are you careless? That's what wake up. Do I care about this, or am I going to be careless? And then I apply that philosophy to myself, and life's been good. I have several businesses, and as you know, we talked earlier, trade stocks, day trade stocks as well. And that's it. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So, I know we've talked offline about this, but if you're educating somebody, like even me, I was involved with annuities. I know that they're invested in different things, but I don't really know nothing about day trading. I've met some guys who did that. When I was in Hawaii, I used to work at a building, and some of the guys that lived there were day traders. But maybe break it. I know this could be long-winded, but maybe in a way that simple that I could understand.
Well, I would first say this is like, there's a lot of times nowadays, I get people that are messaging me, because sometimes I'll post my trades, and they're like, oh yeah, did you hear about this? I'm getting in this, or I'm getting in Bitcoin. And there's so much hype right now. People think they're just going to throw their money in and be instant millionaires. It's kind of like, I'm dumbfounded a lot, because you have to have preparation. My friend Alex, he owns a company called Protein Factory. They do all the custom proteins and everything. And Alex taught me that he's a day trader too. And he taught me, we'd be on the phone from 5:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, daily trading. And I remember losing $22,000 in a week. So you think, oh, I'm just going to get in there and trade and it's going to be great. It's not. So what I would say to anybody is you have to do your homework like a fight. You have to be prepared. You have to be the best I'm at a lack of words for a second. I only had one beer or two. You have to be prepared as much as possible. And then you start little. And then you got to learn chart signals and market cap float and all this kind of crazy jargon. And then you start trading. And you have to have balls. I mean, my friend sent me a lantern. So, because he used to say that the cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. I'm telling you, I was sitting one time on one stock, and my portfolio was down like $50,000, and I was like, and your first instinct might be sell if you were not trained properly, or I can only take the knowledge that I can read and take in, and by no means am I a guru or anything, but you have to suck it up, and then you hold, and sure enough, I mean, it paid off. I was heavy in Tesla and some other stocks, and that went really well. And today was a bit crazy though.
Is it something where most guys have this portfolio? Maybe this is something they're going to use they aren't pulling money out of it, or are they?
No. So when you day trade, let's say you have 100K in the bank, right? Or in your trading account. So sometimes they'll also give you margin on top of that. So you'll have 100,000, but you're able to trade like 180,000 margin. And so you know, get your 100,000 in there and you say, oh, look at this. I think I want to buy some Tesla. It's $300 a share. I want to buy 1,000 shares, you know? So you know, I mean, you wouldn't have the money for that, but let's say you buy 100 shares. And so you buy 100 shares of Tesla at $300 and you spent $100. I mean, you bought 100 shares at $300 and you have $30,000 and then Tesla goes up to 900. Well, you know, but the biggest thing that you can't be is greedy. You cannot be greedy. You better walk away with something than nothing. You look at the Bitcoin thing, who knows where it's going to go. I have my ideas, but I think it went down 50% from 60 something. I think it's 37, 36 right now trading.
Didn't China just say, oh, we're not going to allow anyone to use this? And that just basically sank it, right?
Right. And then when you really don't know, I mean, that's why I like stocks, but still, I don't know. I mean, the big corporations, you know, they push heavy shorting on one stock, or, you know, I'm like, I'll short if I have to, but I'm mainly a bull. I don't know why, because the right way to day trade is to trade the signals. If it looks like, you got a short and the stock looks like you short it. If you want to go long, then you take a long position, or you want to scalp it, or you just depends. Like I talk about Mighty Mo being my claim to fame, and my day trading was with Rocket when Rocket IPO'd. That was like one of my biggest days. I did like $14,000 in 40 minutes.
What is the end game though? Does like guys have it and say, okay, I'm going to have this for 20 years and whatever I have in 20 years, that's what I'm going to walk away with? Or is that,
you got to have,
is that how it works?
So my buddy, Steve Rusich, I don't know if you know, he's from Triple Crown Fight Management. He owns a Kia dealership, and we exchange fighters and stuff. He's a good friend of mine. He lives across the street, but he said he did very well in trading, and really well. And he says, win goals, lost limits. You know, you have to have your goals, and you have to get to a point. If you're going to lose this much, then you're out. I know a lot of people lost a lot of money because they'll watch one or two YouTube videos and think that they can go against these Wall Street gurus. Kind of like fighting, right?
Right.
You can't take a guy off the street, train him 4 days, and expect him to go beat the John Jones. Never happened. So anything you have to do, you have to prepare yourself. And I would say, like, if you want to trade, there's tons of resources online. Study, get an account, and they give you play money. Take your play money and play with it for 60 days. See what you can do with it. You know, now a lot of people say, "Oh, it's play money, so I'm going to get really crazy." But try to do it like genuine. You know, buy a stock. You know, learn how to watch the signals: the 1 minute, the 3 minute, the 5 minute, 10 minute, so on. Decide how you want to set up your chart and all that stuff. You know, and learn about Ichimoku clouds if you want, and all these awesome oscillators, RSI. It's a lot of jargon, but it's all out there on YouTube.
But what I mean is, like, you have this account, right? And it has money in it.
Yeah.
And are most people like, okay, I'm going to do this for 20 years, 30 years, or I'm just going to do this until I reach 500,000, you know, whatever. Do they have some sort of path or not?
Yes, we have a goal. I have a goal. And once I get that goal, I'll trim my position. So once I think that, you know, I've got to where I need to go, I'll take the initial money that I started with, and I'll put that back in the bank. I'll take a little bit out, so maybe I can take, come here, Leo, my little Leo, to go to Europe. Come here.
So you do take some out.
Dog, Leo. Say hi.
Yeah.
And
so you do take some out occasionally.
Oh, absolutely. Not right now. I haven't, because I'm in some positions that I think are going to be really good down the road. But eventually, you know, look, let's be honest. If you're paying attention to everything happening, unemployment, housing, all of it, unemployment's about to stop. Country's about to open up. People have to go back to work. What about everybody that has these mortgages that they're behind a year, and then they're going to have to pay that? And I'm I'm a believer, again, this is just my opinion, that the market's it's gonna crash soon. It's gonna go down.
Yeah, that's what I talk to every day. I talk to people that are on forbearance.
Yeah.
They haven't paid for a year or 18 months now,
Right.
because they changed the 18 months. And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So, I mean, again, people call me and ask me, oh, what should I buy, whatever. I don't even know I don't know what to tell them anymore, because I don't want to give advice, because if it goes wrong, you're the anti-hero. It goes right, you're the hero. So I say, this is what I'm playing. You make your choice. You do your own research and go from there. Because I listened to one guy one time, and I don't even know why I listened to him, and I lost 10K in a week on his stock, and I never would trade that stock ever. And I listened to him, and that again is learning. It's like, shit, you got left hook. You got left hook. You got to keep your right hand up. You learn from those type of mistakes, but when it's in your pocketbook, it's huge.
so tell me about this AMC thing. What this is in the news. Can you kind of explain that in a simple way?
Well, in a simple way, these Reddit groups are formed, and they talk about a stock, and they hype it up, and these GameStop. Remember what happened to GameStop? AMC, and there's one more. I haven't mentioned this one yet. And they hype it up and blow it up, and you see like AMC yesterday, I think, or the day before, whatever I posted was up $34, and I ended up selling at 67. I think it's at 51 right now. And a friend of mine reached out to me and said, "Oh, I really think that," and she's a cop. She says, "I really think that AMC is going to go to $200 or $300." And I was like, "Oof." So as long as you have those out there that are just, it closed at $47.50 AMC. So I sold it at 67, $20 more, right? So if it continues to go down, you're screwed. I mean, why have hope? Make some money. But that's what they do, these Reddit groups, and these Discord groups, and then they tell everybody buy, and the stock goes boom, 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 boom. And that's what's happening. I think yesterday AMC had like 540 million, or the volume was crazy, something crazy.
And these Wall Street guys don't like that, because they're manipulating.
Well, they're manipulating it. They're shorting it.
Yeah.
And so when all these guys are buying it, they're squeezing the shorts. So the shorts are forced to sell, right? And then the stock shoots up. But make no mistake, Clint Eastwood, I think it was in The Enforcer, he says a man's got to know his limitations. I know I'm up against guys in Wall Street that are far superior to I am, So I'm calculated when I trade. And I had a great teacher, like I said, Alex Rogers. And we still talk today about his system, or the things he's working on. But I just say, like anything that you do, learn first. Just don't jump in, and don't believe hype, and don't believe friends because they're posting, I'm on Bitcoin. Look at where all the Bitcoin posts now. Everybody on Facebook was posting Bitcoin, and they're not talking.
See a lot of MMA characters talking about Bitcoin. It seemed like all the rage, How funny is that?
I'm wondering if I don't know. I think people get caught in the hype, and if you're doing something, you're an expert something, maybe focus on that. I read a book called Seasons of a Man's Life, and I know that, man, we're going to go through several career changes. I was in the Army. I came out of the Army. I did MMA for a long time. Now I'm an entrepreneur. I have several businesses and I trade. And who knows what the future holds for me. But whatever I do, I love tacos, Todd, I love tacos. But if I open a taco stand, it's going to be the cleanest. It's going to have the best customer service. It's going to have the best tacos and a great logo and atmosphere. And I'm going to cover all the bases. And if you have that type of work ethic, then I really believe you'll be successful. I'm on a board of directors too for a leadership conference now. and I help mainly minorities learn how to establish small business. It's called the Circle of Change. It's my volunteer thing, you know. So I pre-COVID, I was traveling around and I would speak at different colleges. I think the last one I was at, I was in New York and Queens speaking, and it's great. So for me, I love to be able to give back and help people. But the common denominator, I think, is work ethic, you know, and I'll outwork you. That's what I tell everybody. You know, I'm an alien. I got that from my buddy Matt. He used to be in WWE. Luther Reigns, you know, Matt Weesey. I'll outwork anybody. I'm an alien. And he is, man. He's successful. He's building this crazy house on acres in Arizona, and he's out of WWE, but he started another business, entrepreneur for like 10 years, and the dude is just works his ass off. So I think if you have work ethic, you'd be successful.
Let's talk a little bit about that documentary I saw you on. Why were you approached by it? I know Ed Doty did it. Did you know him, or did he?
Oh, I knew Raphael Torre very well. Yeah.
No, I mean Ed Doty. Did he?
Oh, I knew Ed Doty.
Ed
did a documentary on us on the early days of MMA called Life in a Cage. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I'll have to look.
You haven't?
Sure. No, not that one. I've seen a lot of stuff, but
you have to watch. Ed Doty did a fantastic job on it. That's the Shark Tank. That's us driving down to the Lions Den, training at the Lions Den. You got Shamrock in there, Vernon White. You got Jay Martinez. I forgot to mention Jay. I mean, Jay was a phenomenal. I used to call him Jekyll and Hyde because nicest guy in the gym, and then you get out in the ring and he was a terror. Yeah. To answer your question, sorry, those were my neighbors. I lost my train of thought.
No, I just asked, why did he approach you for that project?
Oh, yeah. So Raphael was living in that vicinity and was a reporter, and he fought in King of the Cage, and the King of the Cage fight was, as you know, mysterious at best. And Raphael, I knew him well, and I remember coming to my gym one time and asking if he could borrow some of my mats because he was opening his gym. And then I heard the story about, you know, allegedly, you know, the story about the trophy and getting dropped off in the wilderness and coming back, you know, for Kumite. Very likable guy. You know, he's obviously in jail now for murder. I don't want to throw him under the bus because personally, he never did anything wrong to me. I got asked to do the documentary by Ed because I knew him. I watched him train. I'm actually not happy on about a couple of things I said in the documentary. I think one was that documentary shot 7, 8, 9 years ago. And he was doing some technique that was questionable. And I think at one I was like, oh, wow. I don't know if I'd approach it like that anymore. You know, I don't want to berate anybody or put anybody down, but I will say there was something about the guy that was different. And, you know, he ended up getting charged with murder. You know, he was going out with this girl, and it was right down the street. They found the guy's body in the parking lot of I think it's Albertsons, one of those. And so homicide came by to my place, and how do you know this guy, and what do you know? It was crazy. It was crazy because he was one of us in the sense. He was a reporter that would really shine light on you and show up, and he had all his chains on and stuff. And he was a good guy and charming. Why he did what he did and why people do what they do for money and kill somebody for insurance money, I can't grasp it. You know, it's cowardly to me. You know, cowardly to take somebody else's life for any other reason. You want to make money, go out there and fucking work. You know, stop looking for a handout. That's it. So, yeah. So I did the documentary, and it was Ed's a great guy. So the director.
I mean, when you were doing that, was that something you were kind of, because you knew him, were you maybe hesitant to do it first, or?
Yeah, I was hesitant, and that was an odd time in my life too when I did that documentary. I don't know what was going on, but I was looking at the tape, and I don't know if I had. I mean, every day I'm learning, right, and growing, trying to become a better person. I tell people if you're going to be Batman physically, you have to be Batman mentally too. And you should always not just work on your physicality, but you should work on your brain and become a better person and a better human being. God knows I made millions of mistakes. But I don't know. Yeah, I chose to do it. If I was asked to do it over again, I might say a couple words, but I don't know. It's very sad for me because, again, the guy was great to us. He was a reporter to go to. He was king of the cage ringside every time, you know. And you see him there, and he was a cool cat. And, you know, when somebody does something like that you know and you consider a friend or an acquaintance, it's a form of betrayal too. Like, dude, you went and murdered somebody, you know. You had a plot to murder somebody, the wife, and to get their money. So it's beyond me. That whole thing was crazy, you know. But I seen a lot of crazy stuff from that guy, you know. And the stories I heard, you know, the stories he would tell me, I was like, all right, right on, you know, great, you know. They were quite the tale, but what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the community was so small back then that you had kind of different characters that everybody knew. Even at my work, some people have seen some of this podcasting I've been doing. They're like, how do you talk to these people all around the world? I'm like, well, the community is really actually smaller than you might think.
Right.
You know, and then as you're doing this stuff, you talk to more people, and that's just all there is to it. And I think that's how it was with Raphael. He was one of the community.
He was,
You know?
and he was a great reporter. For me, you know, like I told you I was hesitant originally doing the podcast because for me, I'm like, I care about my dogs, you know, and this guy and my friends and family and, you know, good people in the sport. But in a lot of ways, I feel bad for a lot of people in the sport that were the groundbreakers and paved the way and are financially broke or don't have a means to make money. Well, you know, I guess, like I said, I think it's always up to you. You need to make money, but those that might have a little bit of brain damage or this or that, or just acknowledgement, you know. I was 3 years ago, I was at Cosmopolitan in Vegas, and I was on the roulette table, and I had quite a bit of money on the table. I think like $7 grand. And there was a pretty famous UFC fighter that came up, and he was walking with his entourage. He was very arrogant, very disrespectful to everybody there. He didn't know who I was. I never said anything. I just kind of chuckled because I think, you know, a lot of the UFC guys, they don't know who paved the way. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to say anything. It didn't matter to me, but I just looked at his attitude and he was boisterous and all that. I don't remember guys back in the day that I trained with that acted like that. I really don't. And you know what's crazy? The K1 guys, we'd go to K1. I remember Stefan Lecco fought. Who did he fight? Did he fight Peter Arce? He fought somebody in K1, right? I think this was in Vegas. And we're all out drinking, partying after. The camaraderie was there. The guys were, at least in my opinion, I'm not saying it's like across the board like that today, but guys were really humble and gracious. And yeah, so it's just funny to me being at the table playing, you know, roulette, and the guy came up and he was just really rude to the dealer, cocky to everybody. That didn't make me miss the sport. Do you know what I mean?
As you're watching it get bigger, though, well, you know, it kind of you brought Mikey Burnett up. You know, Mikey lives in my area. He lives in Tulsa. Yeah, he lives in Tulsa. Okay. I live about 20 minutes from Tulsa. So I've talked to Mikey many times. I was there. He got shot recently. Did you ever hear about that?
Wait a minute.
Mikey was shot 5 times. This was maybe, I want to say 2019. He was with his son. They were at a gym, 10 gym, you know, one of those chain gyms. And this was on the 31st and Garnett area of Tulsa. Not a good place to be at nighttime. And this guy approached him, this kid, maybe 17, 18. And he asked to use his phone. And Mikey said, I'll dial the number then, And the kid just put his gun to his head and said, "You're going to give me your phone," And he had someone else with him, so there were two of them.
Wow.
And Mikey basically, told him to, "I'm not going to give you my phone," and no uncertain words. And he tried to smack it out of his hand, the gun.
Wow.
And the guy just started unloading on him. He shot him 5 times, and his son came around the truck. They had a vehicle they were at and jumped on the guy, and the guy shot him in the leg. The guy put the gun to his leg because he got him on his back,
Yeah.
And he shot him in the leg, so his son falls off. I'm hit. So, yeah, Mikey. Huh?
How old is his son?
His son is an outstanding grappler. His name is Freddie.
Okay.
And I think he just graduated high school maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Big, huge red afro.
Okay.
But outstanding grappler, really good grappler.
Well, I bet.
And yeah, Mikey survived, and I went to the hospital to see him, and he had staples all over his stomach, and he had police in there with him. They caught the kids that shot him within like an hour, because it happened like at 7:30, 8:30. There were people all around,
So I didn't even know this story.
Yeah, I mean, somehow he survived. And on the news, one of the police officers, I think it was the, guy who'd been around a long time, he said, if this guy's not the toughest person in Tulsa, he's one of them.
Oh, I didn't even know the story, and I was talking about him earlier,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's horrible that happened to him. I'm so happy that he survived, It's just crazy.
But when you talk about MMA, he won't even talk about it. So he kind of reminds me of what you're saying. Mikey's like, he wants nothing to do with talking about it.
I think
even in just casual conversation, not even podcast.
I don't tell anybody I was involved in MMA. I go out or whatever, and I'm at a bar, some girls are coming out, whatever. I don't talk about that. I don't even say I'm a business owner. I care. I don't want us. I'm not even joking, and it's kind of a joke. I'll say, I work at McDonald's or I do this, whatever. I mean, I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people that don't want to talk about it feel betrayed by the sport. My take on it is I've met some wonderful people all along, all the way from Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, to the Lions Den guys, to the guys from Hawaii, to the guys in Japan and New Zealand. I have an instructor that I trained for a long time, and he's very successful, named Alan Orr in New Zealand. He's originally from England, and he's a wonderful human being. So I've been able to create some very strong, lasting relationships with some really good people. What I was getting to earlier was I do feel bad for a lot of the gatekeepers and the old guard, because I don't think they get the recognition they deserve. But it seems like that in everything, yeah? Unless you're maybe memorialized in a movie, like Gone with the Wind or something, How many people know who Clark Gable is?
Yeah, I think it's even true of the UFC. I mean, Frank Shamrock's not in the Hall of Fame. John Peretti's not in the Hall of Fame. These guys that were hugely influential in the UFC in one way or another, they're not even involved with the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, we start this podcast and you think how long it could last. I mean, we just touched the tip. We're not even, what about all the work Fabiano Iha did? All of these guys in Southern California to make it happen. Darren Dodson, Clint Dahl, who used to do it. Clint Dahl is a good buddy of mine. He used to do his shows down there in Huntington Beach. It's crazy. It was, and there were shows all the time. It was really neat, Shannon Rich was the one I was thinking about earlier that came out to my gym for a couple of days, and then, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, so as we're kind of winding down this interview, I always like to ask people, maybe there's something you want to leave someone listening to this, maybe something that you felt that was important that you haven't talked about, or maybe a message you wanted to.
I would say that I guess if I was speaking to people that are doing MMA currently and fighting, is that you would need to continue to evolve because your career is only going to last for so long. And, you know, put your money away and do things wisely. Have empathy, be generous, be honest, you know, have solid character, be a work in progress, continue to grow. If you're, and I touched on it earlier, if you're going to spend so much time physically being, you know, a specimen, you have to do the same thing here. And if you're not right there, go out and get the proper help, you know, read books, do whatever. Become Batman physically and become Batman mentally. That's what I try to mentor a lot of the people that I mentor that are starting small businesses or youth coming out of college that have these dreams and goals, you know. Growing up, a lot of people don't have fathers and mothers that are going to tell them what they need to do properly. And they don't have the proper mentorship, right? That's something I really think is lacking. I think that, you know, yeah, to sum it up, that would be it. You know, work on yourself inside and out.
Well, you know, Eddie, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. You know, you're someone I've wanted to talk to, you know, because like I said, for me, it's more about bringing voices that I think they're important that people haven't heard, that can give them a perspective from a different kind of angle, or an educated perspective, but a voice they haven't heard before.
Yeah.
And, you're one of those people I definitely wanted to do that with.
Yeah. And, you know, we'd even talk about like how I started promoting fights too. Remember with Invincible Fighting Championship? And I had that sponsorship with Bodog. And then I started producing the first ever female fights in California with Fatal Femmes. And that was great too. So maybe next time we'll talk about, you know, trying to find 16 female fighters back then when it wasn't popular, before Ronda Rousey, right, from around the world, get them medically cleared and getting them to fight in California. You want to talk about probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life? That is it. We'll have to talk about that one time.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to do that. Talk to you again. But as far as this one, I really appreciate you taking the time to do it, and I'd love to get you on again to do another one.
Yeah,
I don't want to take up all your time. I could sit here and talk to you for hours, but you know.
I know, but I don't think people they're probably like, oh, Eddy Millis, do I want to listen to a podcast for 2 hours? You know?
Right.
Yeah, but if you have any more questions, you know, I'm open. Again, I appreciate you asking me to be on your show. It's a great honor, and you know, I'd like to say hello to all the people that I've been able to work with or train under, and in some way maybe help, or that have helped me, and sending out lots of love to those people. And yeah, so until next time, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. It was great. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So maybe I know we're recording, but maybe you and I will talk in the next couple of days and we talk a little bit more stocks.
Sure thing.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right, brother. Thank you.